Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and we go over the week's events in the world of Scientology. Tony, what a week!
Incredible week.
Yeah.
Almost as nice as your shirt, but it was an incredible week.
Weather appropriate for the real heat wave we're having this summer in Colorado. It has been intense this year. I mean, triple digits intense. It's wild. So we got some fun stuff to talk about. Starting with new edition of Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, 75th edition. There were a couple stories on this one. What came up?
Well, as a former Scientologist, you know just how big Dianetics, the modern science of mental health, is in the world of Scientology. This is the book that started it all. L. Ron Hubbard came out with it on May 9th, 1950. Eventually led to the Scientology movement. And so the 75th anniversary happened earlier this year. And you remember we talked about how David Miscavige, leader of Scientology, held a special event in Clearwater to celebrate it. And one of the things that they said at that event, according to their press release slideshow afterwards, was that they were coming out with a new edition of Dianetics. I mean, that's a big deal, right? It's been since 2007 was the last edition, which he put out as part of the basics that year. And it's a big deal when there's a new edition of Dianetics. I mean, like I said, this is the book that started it all. Scientologists literally call it Book One. And so I wanted to see what was in it to see if he made any changes. Because, of course, one of the most bedrock basic truths of Scientology is all based on what Hubbard wrote, and that is supposed to be sacrosanct and not to be changed. But David Miscavige usually makes some little changes here and there, and they can be highly controversial. They can lead to people leaving the Church of Scientology sometimes. Well, Alex Barnes Ross managed to get a hold of a copy this week, and he knew what I was interested in, and he immediately sent me some scans because one of the things I was curious about is there's a couple of passages in this book that are truly vile and that we have brought up many times. You and I have talked about it, Chris. There's this incredible statement about two-thirds of the way through this big book, maybe a lot of people never even see it, that talking about how there's something wrong with a 7-year-old girl who recoils from a passionate kiss from an adult man. And it's just an incredible statement of child molestation. People try to explain it away, but it really it says it is what it says, that there's something wrong with a girl who is not down with the idea of an adult man kissing her passionately. So I thought, okay, we bring this up a lot. It's an embarrassment to the Church of Scientology. Here's an opportunity for David Miscavige to quietly get rid of it. Nope, it's still in there. And Alex sent me a scan of it. There's also the statement of homosexuality being a perversion and a sickness. Scientology we know is a homophobic organization, but this was an opportunity for Dave to pull out a line like that, which was really unnecessary in a book like this. Nope, it's still in there. So that was the first surprise, to see that David Miscavige did not take this opportunity to get rid of a little bit of a PR headache. But then the other thing was what he added. What he added were some testimonials up at the front of the book, from John Travolta, Erica Christensen, that kind of thing. Celebrities endorsing Dianetics with a short line. And I just thought that was remarkable because, I mean, it include people like Elena Cardone. This is the most important book in Scientology. Imagine the sort of immortality you must feel you have to have your name. I mean, I knew that, John Travolta is really big on Dianetics and L. Ron Hubbard, more than, more than maybe Scientology itself. And so this has got to be huge for him. And also shows that, of course, he's still in the fold, just like we knew, despite what the tabloids are always saying. John Travolta's endorsement of the book is the first one. But something else I noticed was that one of the endorsements was from David Campbell, who is Beck's father. Beck has announced that he has left Scientology, but his dad, David Campbell, a composer and arranger, is still very much a hardcore Scientologist. And he's got a typical quote in there about how it changed his life and how wonderful it was. But then when it was listing who he was, it said that he's this legendary composer and arranger who's worked with people like Michael Jackson, Paul McCartney, and Taylor Swift. And I thought, wait a minute, hang on. Does Taylor Swift's name now appear in Scientology's Bible? And not only that, but in a part of the book that's meant to endorse it in order to promote it to other people, right? I mean, it's saying that David Campbell was able to do great things for Taylor Swift because of Dianetics, and this is the book you should buy. So I just was stunned. I just thought, wow, I assume Taylor Swift doesn't know that her name is in there. Again, this is not some bit of marketing or promotional material from Scientology. This is book one. Taylor Swift's name is now in Scientology's Bible. I just thought it was crazy. What did you think, Chris?
I thought it was interesting and funny and a rehash of things they've done before, of course, because celebrity endorsements are nothing new for them. And you remember that old Scientology handbook was just like packed to the gills with those celebrity endorsements back in the day. When when Miscavige wants to impress, he name drops, and Hubbard said that's the reason to have celebs is so that you can name drop them, and people will pay more attention. And if it brings attention, then it's serving its purpose. And they desperately need, I mean, they are desperate for some positive notoriety or spin on their name. And Dianetics gives Miscavige an opportunity, 75th anniversary, to forward this book. And we can say, I'll certainly let everybody know, there are a whole new PR campaign being put together to promote Dianetics and get it out there, which you'll probably be seeing roll out later this year if timing works out. Otherwise, maybe next year. Things move slower in Scientology world than Miscavige would like it to, mainly because of him. And yet this happening. There's new services and a new workshop and new stuff, which is all just the old stuff rehashed, because as you mentioned, Miscavige can't bring anything new to the line. He does get away. I did want to comment and let people know he does get away with taking stuff out of Hubbard's materials. It's not the sanctity and purity and every comma must be in place. They say that, but they have taken out whole passages from lectures and books in the past to clean up their act or clean up Hubbard's act when he was saying racist stuff and overtly misogynistic stuff and sexist stuff. Hubbard had plenty of that, and they didn't have a problem taking that stuff out in the past. So it is telling the point you're making that they left those in, because that is full on ammunition in today's culture to take shots at Scientology with. I'll say one other thing real fast that is in terms of the celebrity endorsements, I'm maybe even mildly surprised, but whose name is not in the new Dianetics book? Tom Cruise.
Yeah, but Chris, he doesn't read.
Yes, that's right. That dyslexia that Scientology helped him cure, right? Yes, very, very true. Read a book. Just read a book. So there you go. Anyway, I thought that was. I hope you guys feel a little bit more informed from some of that today with the Dianetics thing, and we'll see where they go with it. But the thing that inevitably happens, by the way, when they put out Dianetics is that they have to and want to connect the dots between Dianetics and Scientology. They want to use Dianetics as a medium to get people into the church. But in today's climate and with the knowledge that's out there now, they're never going to have a harder time doing that. And Miscavige, I can't tell if the guy lives in a world of ignorance or denial or just, screw the world, I'm going to do it anyway, that he doesn't seem to understand the position that Scientology's in PR wise, and he thinks he can overcome it with these tired old ideas that he rehashes rather than address the elephant in the room. Hey, you're credibly accused of being an abusive organization. How about you go on Ted Koppel again, and Nightline again, and face some music, right? And he doesn't even feel like the idea occurs to him to do that. So I don't know, Tony. I mean, how do you see that?
Well, they've really retreated in a lot of ways. I mean, they have
Haven't they?
nobody. They have nobody to go on camera.
Yeah.
The last time they had somebody on camera, it was not even a Scientologist, it was an attorney for them.
That's right.
So
That's right.
he's made that decision that they're just not going to talk to the press. But the press is a lot more savvy now than it was about Scientology 20 years ago, and that's made it more difficult for him. But yeah, now that you mention it, we did have at the bunker, we had a photo of a bus in Washington, D.C. wrapped with this new Dianetics campaign.
Yep.
So we're starting to see it. Yeah, they're going to make a push. They're going to make a push, and they count on people, trying to intrigue people about this book Dianetics, not out front saying, "Hey, this is the way we get you into Scientology." That's something that
That's right.
So, but I don't know if they're going to have much success with that. People, the word is out, man. It's hard to maybe there's a way. They almost took that on with when he started telling. If you remember, when he started Scientology TV, and it debuted in 2018, 7 years now. Um, the first 10 minutes of that broadcast was Miscavige himself stepped out on camera and said, "We get it. We know what you've heard, but you haven't heard it from us." And I was like, "Wow, that's interesting that they're going to kind of try to turn around the criticism." But even that they're not trying to do now. It's just the same old thing, and it's just not working.
Not even a little bit. And I mean, I'm not a marketing genius. Nobody's paying me millions of dollars to come up with marketing campaigns, but I actually confidently feel like I could market Dianetics in today's climate. But there's this initial missing step of recognition of wrongs and mistakes were made, and they just can't go there. And since they won't, they're not going to get past their rightfully earned negative public image. Let's be clear. You all out there know a hell of a lot more truth about what goes on in Scientology than the people in the church do. You know. All right. So anyway, just interesting commentary on what's coming in the future there. Now, more stories from this week, and this was one that I was a little, oh wow, this is coming back. The Priscilla Presley lawsuit. This was
Yes,
Scientology
right.
adjacent in a way. What is this?
It is, and that's why I was covering it earlier. This Brigitte Cruz was very close to Priscilla and the rest of the family, working with her, trying to help her turn around some bad finances. And then she believed that Priscilla really turned her back on her and cut her out of some lucrative deals. So it was a breach of contract thing, and she sued in Florida. And then Priscilla got, help from Marty Singer, the legendary Hollywood attorney, and they sued Brigitte from Los Angeles for elder abuse. And Brigitte's lawsuit in Florida wasn't going so well. The one in LA was really, giving her some setbacks. I, interviewed Brigitte and we talked. I did a piece with her earlier this year where she said she's got, she was very close to Priscilla. She's got some real receipts that, and I've been waiting to see what she does with that. And apparently with this last week, she really dropped a nuclear bomb on the whole thing. She filed a new lawsuit in Los Angeles for $50 million against Priscilla, with the help of a new attorney. And there's more people on both the plaintiff side and the defendant side, but basically it's Brigitte versus Priscilla. And it makes a lot of claims, but the one that got the press's attention this week was Brigitte's lawsuit says that when Lisa Marie Presley fell ill in January 2023, and she was on life support in a hospital, and her daughter Riley was rushing home in a plane from Seattle. I think she'd been filming in Vancouver while Riley was still in the air, against the express statements of a directive that Lisa Marie had signed, saying in case of a thing like this, keep me alive as long as you can. Priscilla had the plug pulled. And so
Wow.
it's
Wow.
basically and specific in the lawsuit alleges it was specifically because of Priscilla was, was being sued by her daughter. They were in a fight, and Priscilla realized that this would preserve her place in the money. So I mean, it's basically making an allegation that Priscilla Presley killed her own daughter for financial gain.
Wow.
Incredible allegation. And then,
Yeah.
you know, things like this, um, you're only going to get that in a lawsuit if you've convinced a lawyer you've got evidence of it, right? So that's what makes it really concerning. And Marty Singer's response, Priscilla's attorney, I've never seen him this worked up. This guy, he's been around forever. I was dealing with him when I was at the Village Voice, years ago. But man, he was really angry when he was giving the Daily Mail a lengthy statement. I've never seen anything like it. So this has moved up to World War III between these two women. I gotta say, my readers reacted by saying they both look terrible in this. I don't know. I just I know based on what Brigitte has told me that she's got some big bombshells coming, and this is I guess we're going to see more of the same unless these two women can work it out.
Damn. That is a weapon of mass destruction level accusation. That is not lightweight stuff. I mean, your own, Jesus, your own daughter. Um, you mentioned there were some other accusations or other points in this. Any other points worth bringing up right now?
Well, um, I saw the other press react to that, and that was in all the headlines. And so my inclination is always, I went right to the court and got the actual document. I wanted to see it for myself. And
Yeah.
then when I saw how it's just a litany of descriptions about how Machiavellian Priscilla has been the whole time, and how her relationship with her daughter was always terrible, and how they were always maneuvering against each other, I was like, I think people need to see this. Okay, so
Yeah.
in the lawsuit, there's a summary that's a few thousand words long, and then there's individual causes of action. I published the entire summary so people could see it. And it's just all these allegations of Priscilla, just really, and again, this is coming from somebody suing her.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to try to prove this stuff in court, but it's quite a litany.
Wow. Well, let me just throw in on this, from my perspective, of course, what I can speak to in terms of the Scientology angle of this. Um, I don't think it's going to be any big surprise if I tell people, look, most Scientologists are very indoctrinated into and even converted if they didn't start this way. Because, a lot of people have pretty sensible moral foundations and ideas when they get into Scientology, and they morph over time into something more like what Hubbard was, because that's how this stuff works. And one of Hubbard's most basic moral principles is the ends justify the means, right? You do whatever you need to do to get done what needs to get done. And because they have such megalomaniacal levels of ego and surety about what they're doing and how good it is inherently and through, this bleeds over into their personal lives as Scientologists too. And when you get these high caliber, high income, wealthy Scientologists, they have a history we've seen of violating the law, of straight up, thumbing their nose at authorities, and of I don't know, interfamilial, internecine, conflicts, even between the heavy hitters. And what do you see, on these battlefields? You see this egotistical, maniacal level of behavior that you're just like at a human level, it's just offensive. You're just like, Jesus, whether it's the Scientology chiropractors or the wealthy investors, these people will just destroy other people's lives in the name of their own wealth acquisition. So to find out Priscilla Presley may be, credibly accused of such behaviors, hardly surprising in the world of Scientology, high-end rollers, right?
And let's remind people, you and I have talked about this before. In 2015, Lisa Marie told me personally that she had had her final break with Scientology, her final break with
Yeah.
Dave Miscavige. And at that point in 2015, she told me she had brought out Riley and Priscilla with her. She said,
Yeah.
I need your support. You got to come out with me. In the years since then, we weren't exactly sure what was going on with Lisa Marie and Scientology, but especially since in the last couple of years, we have seen signs that Priscilla's back in.
Yeah.
If you remember, in particular, not only was she hanging out with Gottfried Helnwein, but when she sat down for an interview with Sofia Coppola for extra material from that movie Sophia made of her, Priscilla Presley's literally wearing a Scientology pendant on camera. And this was 2 years ago, I think. So anyway, I think she's back in. Despite what Lisa told me in 2015, I think Priscilla's back in. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. In the same way that Nicole Kidman sort of brings Tom out, or at least away from the fold, and then they get him back,
Right,
right?
right.
The recovery thing in Scientology is absolutely a thing. I did it myself for years, just not with the high rollers, but the same methodologies and tactics apply. Isolate, separate, manipulate, control. It's all coercive. So did they get Priscilla back? I'm positive they did. I mean, her wearing a Scientology cross around her neck is definitely sending a message, to the people in the church. I'm out, I'm loud, I'm proud. Here I am being a Scientologist again, right? So there you go. Guess we'll see where this goes. The one thing we know about lawsuits is they take some time, so we'll see what happens. Do we know anything in terms of, we got the blistering public response in the press release? What about legal responses?
Well, I haven't checked in the couple days since then, but I mean, to me, it's legal brinkmanship, and it's like if you're going to keep hammering me in Los Angeles, Brigitte is saying, I'm going to keep coming out with the bombshells. So, um,
Right.
they're hoping. I'm sure they're hoping for some sort of a private settlement of all this to get that out of the courts. But
Right.
quite a salvo from Brigitte's side.
Right. So we'll see if this even does progress, or maybe it just checks get written and the whole thing goes away. All right. Guess we'll see what happens. Now, speaking of appeals and back and forth, we roll right into Masterson. And now this is the criminal case. We talked about the civil case last week. What is happening here criminally?
Right. So last week we talked about the response from the Jane Does in the civil lawsuit.
Yeah.
And I told you what I was really looking forward to was the prosecution's response in the criminal case. Danny Masterson is in prison for 30 years to life, and he has appealed. His appeal, I believe it was late December, right around Christmas time. We saw what his appeal looked like. Viciously went after the Jane Does and their testimony, and also complained a lot about the Scientology content of the trial.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been looking forward to response ever since it came in this week from the California Attorney General's office. 42,000 words, very methodically went over all of the testimony from all three Jane Does, from the experts, from Claire Headley in particular. And, when I was going through this again and remembering, I was I was at the every day of that trial and the previous trial. I remember how stunned I was, how much Scientology was a part of this case. This is truly one of the most historic, events in Scientology history. Is the way that Scientology and its practices, its victim blaming practices, were brought up. Really arcane concepts from the policies of L. Ron Hubbard were talked about right there in court, and then now are part of this appeal. So I just thought it was really comprehensive, and it tries to deal with each of the issues that Masterson's side has brought up. Um, I thought it did a pretty good job with all of that, and we'll see. I don't know. I have not heard. This appellate attorney, Texas lawyer, helps us out because the facts. It looks like they're dealing with the facts very well, but is it good lawyering? I don't. It's
Right.
hard for me to tell. So I've got this specialist. He is literally an appellate attorney. he's wading through it. It's such a long document. We're gonna have to wait a little while before he comes back with his verdict. But I don't know. It just seemed to me like a really great way of responding to all of the things that Danny's side had brought up.
Right.
And it's going to be a while because there that now Danny's going to have a chance to respond to this, and then at some point, I guess there might be oral arguments. It may be another year or so before we hear anything about what's going on with this appeal. And also, if you remember, we talked about this, Chris, that Masterson's side is not just asking for a new trial on a couple of points, which they are, but on a couple of other points, they're asking for just, completely getting rid of the conviction and letting him go. So a lot at stake here.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I'm glad that the state came back, as predictably they would, from a state government position with a rational reason. Well, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this. What else would you expect? They're not writing for an audience of, David Miscavige in the mix, right? And so, as we saw from Leah's exposure of those documents a few weeks ago, the Scientology attorneys or Scientology adjacent connected attorneys are directed to, make things a religious crusade, put the attention on that, really drum up the First Amendment stuff, freedom of religion and all of that, and use that religious cloaking to stave off any accusations and even now convictions of criminal behavior. Oh, no, no, no. Don't you understand? This is religious and you can't even talk about that in this courtroom, which is why both of us were so surprised at how much it featured. But after it didn't feature at all in the first trial, I thought the
No, 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 no. That's
prosecution,
that's not true. And see, you've said that before. There
well,
was a lot of Scientology in the first trial. There was
yeah.
even more in the second trial.
That my point, I guess, right, is that because when we interviewed the jurist, the jury foreman, it wasn't an issue. It wasn't in the
It
jurors'
wasn't an
minds.
issue with the jury,
Yeah,
but all of the Jane Does did testify to the things they were put through because of Scientology, and Judge Olmedo did allow a lot of testimony about Scientology in that first trial, but she did not allow Claire Headley in the first trial. Changed her mind between trials and realized that it's not enough just to hear from the Jane Does. It's appropriate also to have an expert who backs up what the Jane Does are saying, and specifically in the situation where um, why she knew that the jury would have the question, if these crimes occurred in 2001 and 2003, why are we talking about them in 2022? What took so long? And the answer is these women were terrified of coming forward because it was against Scientology. So in the second trial, they had said that in the first trial, but in the second trial, Judge Olmedo allowed an expert to come in and say, yes, there are specific things in these books about not suing another Scientologist, not turning in another Scientologist to law enforcement, and keeping your mouth shut about things and being blamed as a victim. So yeah, no, there definitely was Scientology in that first trial. Believe me, I was there, but there was much more in the second one.
fair enough, fair enough. And if I've mischaracterized it, I was only to make that point, right? That because I thought, and in my little way that I think that maybe we had some something to do with the prosecution coming in a little harder on
Well, I don't
that.
think there's any question that that interview helped them see where things were weaker. And I would say it's not the Scientology that helped in the second trial. I mean, I'm glad that there was so much Scientology in the trial, but I think it was more the way they ordered the women. They started off with
Mm,
Jane Doe 1 in the first trial. They started off with Jane Doe 3 in the second trial. They thought about the presentation of material, and they thought about the way Ariel Anson presented material and they went much more hard with the drugging. There were just a lot
yeah.
of things that they did better the second time around. They did not walk into some traps that Philip Cohen had kind of set for them the first time around, and so I think that they did really benefit from hearing what the jury was concerned about that first time.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're nailing it. Absolutely true. Absolutely. Um, cool. Well, let's see where this goes. For now, Masterson's still cooling his jets in prison. And as far as I'm concerned, that's where he belongs. And I do think, I just got to say this just because it's just, is the whole argument of, well, this is religious dogma, therefore we can't bring it into the courtroom. I despise that entire line of thinking and the fact that churches of any kind get away with it because the dogma informs the behavior. And if somebody acts criminally because of this dogma, we need to be able to address and talk about that, not shoo it under the rug and give the religious cults a pass as a result, and that's where I come from on this stuff too. It's not just Scientology that gets away with that stuff, Okay, so next story. Trish Duggan back in the news. Her museum, rather. What was this story?
I hadn't heard about this, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
That city of Clearwater, of course, is trying desperately to overcome the stranglehold Scientology has on the downtown, and they've been looking for ways to make things better. So a couple years ago, they opened Coachman Park with a music venue. Very, very smart thing. That, of course, that was
Yeah.
when Mark Bunker was on the city council. Very good move to get that park going. Right against that park is this Clearwater Library building. Very nice library building. That Paula Cooper and I were there 10 years ago to talk about the book. And they're using it less and less. The city, it's a very large building that's much more than just the library. It's where much of the city operates from. But they're getting a new city hall, and so this library is really being underused. In May, what I didn't hear was that they had put out a call for proposals for putting a new museum in that building instead of the library, and it would be right next to Coachman Park. It'd be, this is another opportunity where Clearwater could finally start to create an identity away from the Church of Scientology.
Right.
So a number of different, organizations pitched projects, and one of them was this guy Fred Trust. Now he's a world-class collector of Frank Baum books, memorabilia, and things associated with the Wizard of Oz movie. And 3 years ago, he created a small museum in Cape Canaveral, the Wizard of Oz Museum. And it's it, he charges a good amount of money, but he has high rankings. That's a tricky thing to maintain, right? And I just randomly typed in best children's museum in Florida. It was ranked number one. So, and the reason is not just because it's got his great collection of books and the pole arm from Winky from the actual movie and some other props, um, but that it's an immersive experience where you get to walk down the yellow brick road and you see Dorothy and the witch and all that kind of stuff. So it gets really good reviews, and he's been looking for a way to kind of upgrade and expand. So he saw that opportunity and he applied. Well, then he reached out to me. Again, I didn't know any of this was going on. He reached out to me because he's saying, "Listen, I'm trying to understand why I'm getting ranked second in this behind this other museum that I beat in every category." And then he told me it was Trish Duggan's Imagine Museum. I was like, "Oh, wait a minute." And so this last Friday, Fred for the Wizard of Oz Museum, the Imagine Museum people, and a third for a comedy museum got a final chance to give a presentation to this library advisory committee that's going to recommend to the city hall what to put in there. And I'd asked Fred, call me right after, let's talk. And so after he gave his presentation, he gave me a call. I said, so how'd it go? He says, I don't know. I did the best I could. Okay. So that afternoon, they were going to announce the winner. So later in the afternoon, he called me again. He was like, now we're in third place. Uh, and the Library Advisory Committee has decided to recommend to the City Council that Trish Duggan's Imagine Museum, here they have an opportunity. And now, listen, I want to say, I don't know that Fred's Wizard of Oz Museum is the solution, but at least Fred's museum has an opportunity to appeal to kids, right? And it's already getting great reviews. And instead, they're going with the richest Scientologist in the world in her glass art.
And her glass art with space aliens. It's weird. I mean, pull
What
up the
kid is going
pictures.
to
This
want to
place
go
is
into that,
weird.
right?
Yeah, it's
It's
weird.
just incredible that Clearwater just keeps, you know, knocking itself down.
Here, Mr. Scientologist. Here, Mrs. Scientologist. Have some more real estate in downtown Clearwater.
And then after I
I know.
wrote that, I remembered that Tracy McManus a couple years ago wrote that Scientology really wanted Trish to get her Imagine Museum into the old city hall. That they were vacating because they were going to get a new one, which would have been a huge victory for Scientology. But the city decided to tear that building down. So now I realize this is just part of a continuing effort. They've thought of this for a long time. It's like, what a great way to plant our flag. These city people are trying to create some life here. Let's just kill it with this stake in the heart. Oh, I can't believe Clearwater is voluntarily walking into this. This is just incredible.
And all too typical, unfortunately. I can only shake my head because, you know, somebody, yeah, it when you look when you have an organization led by a cult leader in 1975 land in your town under the auspices of Operation Normandy, a written program to literally take over the town for that church institution. We don't have to spin conspiracy fantasies here. It's in Hubbard's writing. It's not like Clearwater doesn't have access to this, but they just keep not giving it the credibility it actually has. For whatever reasons, probably an awful lot of money if I go there, trading hands behind the scenes to influence or wealth peddle this stuff into existence. This has been a written program for Scientology for 40 years now. I mean, 75. This is an old thing. Scientology plays the long game. It doesn't look like a museum and a park. What's the big deal? Yeah, look at the map of downtown Clearwater and how many properties Scientologists own, and we can start to see the magnitude of the problem. It's real, it exists. It's not religious discrimination to say this when that religion is plotting to overthrow the ownership of your town, which is what Scientology is doing. Let me just be real blunt and clear about that, because you don't have to read between the lines of what's going on here. This is just another Lego brick on the field of let's take this place over, right, and turn it into our Scientology Vatican, as you like to say, and which I think is completely accurate. So, all right. Anyway, thanks, Tony, for that. And finally, we have the ongoing saga of the International Association of Scientologists yearly event. Alex Barnes-Ross doing championship work over there to protest it, to bring it into the public light. And now we have the event moving forward, or what's going on?
Well, David Miscavige brought back the IAS event at St. Hill in 2023 after the pandemic, and Tom Cruise flew him in his helicopter, and Tom made a big showing of being there. But Alex Barnes-Ross was outside holding a protest. This is a former Scientology London staffer, and he held protests at both of the last two IAS galas at St. Hill Manor. But he's really digging into things and realized that Scientology's not following the rules. If you're going to put up this gigantic tent to hold thousands of people, you need a permit for it. And Scientology had not been applying for it. So once Alex brought that up, that the Mid Sussex District Council, it's called, sort of a county level council, said, "Hey, yeah, what's up with that, Scientology? Why aren't you giving us, planning documents and stuff like that?" So what Scientology tried to do was they argued that they've put that tent up so many years that now it's kind of like a permanent building, so it doesn't need a permit. And the council said, "No, that's not going to fly." And but then once that decision came down a couple of weeks ago, we're looking at the calendar thinking they still haven't applied for this year's permit, and October's going to be here before you know it. Especially when putting up a tent like that is a multi-week undertaking.
Yep.
So Alex has been keeping an eye. Some of my readers have been keeping an eye on this and reporting it at the website. They haven't applied for a permit today, Tony. They haven't applied for a permit, and so it was kind of a big deal. We were recording our podcast over there, and Alex said, "I've got some new photos. They're building it," and so Scientology just going to barrel through. They're going to build this tent, ask for permission afterwards, and I don't know. This council, I think, is starting to get fed up with the way Scientology tries to kind of, push them around. So this could get very interesting. And their drone photos clearly of just the ground has been treated. Obviously, it's been graded down, and they're starting to put in the walkway and stuff. So it's early, but pretty clear that's where they put that tent up. They're intending to do it, so we'll be watching that carefully. Scientology's just going to try to muscle its way through, I guess.
Of course they are, as though they were going to pack up and go home and not have an event this year. Yeah, right. Miscavige would just as soon, no, that's not going to happen. And to be clear, the attitude from Miscavige's level is this is war. This is art of war. This is how we're going to think about this. That's how they fight their legal battles. Is art of war. That's what they bring to this sort of civil battles that they have with government, county boards and officials and whatnot. Is we are the attitude within Scientology, and especially at the top, is we are above the laws. We are above county, state, federal governments. We're rewriting civilization because we're going to be running things one day. These people have no idea who they are, what they're doing, what they're talking about. They're just getting in our way. They are, as Hubbard says, the dogs chasing the fire engine right to the fire. Nobody cares about that. So he doesn't. That's how he thinks about these people. Is he thinks they are ridiculous. Their fine system, their permitting system, that's all ridiculous nonsense. And he just tells his junior people, deal with it, handle it. I don't want to hear about it. Just deal with it. And I don't even know that this has rolled up to him yet. He's aware of all of this happening, but he's still pushing it down of you people deal with this, you people deal with this. And then they're left to pick up the pieces because command intention is what David Miscavige wants. And the first point, and all these people who are doing this stuff are Sea Org members. Remember, this is top level Sea Org fanatics. So their first point of loyalty as a Sea Org member is I promise to uphold, forward, and carry out command intention. So if David Miscavige wants it, used to be LRH intention, by the way. Now it's command intention. And so if David Miscavige wants it, this is what we have to make happen. So in other words, I guess where I'm going with all of that is they will eat any number of fines. And if somebody has to do some time in jail, which is not, I don't think this is going to be a criminal thing, but if it were to become that, one of the OSA guys would go, okay, I'm going down, let's do it, and throw himself on the sword in order for an event to happen. That's the stakes here, is an event is going to happen, but these people see it as life or death. And I guess considering it's their largest fundraising event every year, I guess it is life and death.
Well, it's the event, where they celebrate the big donors, and this is where Trish Duggan and Tom Cummins and Jim Bridgeforth and the Atkinson Bakers get their moment in the sun. They get their new trophy. They get to pose with Dave. So it's a big deal, especially for an organization that's having that we were talking earlier about how they're struggling to recruit new people. So stroking the big donors is basically Dave's number one activity now. And
right.
and of course this is the one that Tom comes to. So we'll be very interested to see if they go ahead and push through.
Yeah. Yeah, the event's happening. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
Whether they get the approval of the county or not is what we'll have to see. I mean, they'll call for an emergency session. They'll bring they'll bring attorneys in. They'll bring in. I mean, shit. They haven't done this yet. They can't do it as easily in the UK. They can't play the religious discrimination card as easily over there. But if they get a chance, they'll throw it out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, nothing's off limits. So we'll have to see what happens with this. Tony, thank you very much for your reporting this week on this stuff. Good stuff. Do we know any preview of what's coming up?
I tell you what, this was about as big a week as you're going to get in August.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Wow. So yeah, I'm working on various things, but I'm not exactly sure. Some people take it easy this time of year, but I sure didn't this week.
Awesome. All right, folks. Well, you're hearing it here first. Now, on the screen right there in front of you is the address to Tony's Substack, and I do want you to go to it, get your subscriptions, get your daily notifications, check it out, and then check back in with us on Mondays for the wrap up. On that happy note, we'll see you guys next week. Bye bye.